Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. Ever pondered the resilience of humanity when pitted against a galaxy-wide coalition armed with bioweapons? Let's get into the story. Admiral Riker stared at the holographic map, a knot tightening in his gut. The glowing red dots representing human expansion seemed to pulse and sync with his own quickening heartbeat. For decades, humanity had relentlessly pushed the boundaries of known space, a relentless tide of explorers and colonists that left countless established civilizations floundering in their wake. The Galactic Coalition, a fragile alliance between a dozen starfaring races, had desperately sought to contain them. Diplomacy had failed, sanctions and embargoes had been ignored. Now, the only option left on the table was unthinkable. Dr. Shealis, a spindly avian scientist known for his controversial work in bioengineering, had assured them the weapon would be precise, the results absolute. It was designed to target human physiology, leaving the ecosystems of any conquered worlds intact. Riker's comm unit crackled to life.
Admiral, it's starting.
A panicked voice echoed through the bridge. He switched the display to a live feed from Orbit 1, the humans' primary lunar colony. The first wave of the biological agent had been covertly released just hours earlier. Panic erupted across the screen, figures collapsing in the streets, cries of agony filling the airwaves.
"They won't even know what hit them,"
Shealis had whispered confidently, a glint in his eyes. The human contagion should have swept across Orbit 1 within hours. Initial projections calculated a mortality rate exceeding 90%. The remaining population weakened and vulnerable, ripe for swift subjugation. Instead, the chaos had begun to subside. Medical personnel, clad in hastily donned protective suits, moved among the stricken. Figures Riker thought dead twitched, sat upright, and shakily clambered to their feet.
Admiral!
The panicked comms officer blurted.
The contagion's impacted. It's minimal. The humans, they seem to be stabilizing.
Impossible. Giles' calculations couldn't have been that flawed. Riker switched the feed to another human settlement, then another. The results were the same everywhere. Confusion, disorientation, then slow, staggering recovery. His stomach churned. Had they underestimated these humans so drastically? Chaos reigned within the Coalition's war room. Shouts and accusations ricocheted across the chamber as leaders, once bound by a common purpose, descended into finger-pointing and recriminations. Giles, once preening and confident, now cowered under the weight of 1,000 furious glares. He stammered out half-baked theories of unexpected mutation rates and delayed reactions, but his voice held little conviction. Within the human territories, the initial shock and disbelief were swiftly replaced by a grim determination. Orbit 1 became a beacon of hope as reports of similarly miraculous recoveries spread across their networks. The attack had backfired, galvanizing them in ways no propaganda ever could. Dr. Evelyn Brown, one of humanity's leading experts in xenobiology, emerged as their unlikely savior. "They miscalculated," she declared, broadcasting from the heart of Orbit 1's medical facility. "The adaptive capability of the human genome is greater than even we realized. This isn't simply resistance, it's evolution, accelerated by their attack." Her words were a rallying cry. Across human space, the call went out. They would not just survive this, they would turn it back on their attackers. The Coalition, now painfully aware of their catastrophic blunder, scrambled to secure their biological research facilities. Teams of engineers were dispatched, tasked with modifying or destroying any work that could be exploited by the humans. But humanity had momentum. Their counterattacks weren't vast planetary invasions, but targeted strikes with pinpoint accuracy. They pinpointed research stations, orbiting moons hidden within nebula, outposts disguised as civilian settlements, and labs nestled deep inside the hearts of planets believed untouchable. Each strike was a message. We know what you did. We know where you are, and we're coming for you. The humans, once seen as a relentless tide, now operated with the precision and speed of a surgical scalpel. It was a transformation born of both necessity and a thirst for cold justice. Each liberated lab revealed a new piece of the biological puzzle, a further glimpse into the weaponized pathogen and their own surprising defenses. Dr. Brown and her team worked tirelessly, deciphering alien data formats and unraveling the logic behind grotesque biological experiments. The picture that emerged was horrifying. Species-specific diseases meticulously cultivated, viruses twisted and mutated to ensure maximum devastation. And it wasn't just humans. Countless other emerging spacefaring races had been quietly studied and cataloged, their vulnerabilities mapped like stars waiting to be consumed. The Coalition, once united in fear, now fractured further. Trust shattered. Smaller, less influential members secretly approached the humans, offering information and apologies disguised as desperate pleas for future leniency. In the face of humanity's focused fury, the once mighty alliance began to crumble from within. On the fringes of Coalition space, Captain Alex Watson piloted the Harbinger, a modified human corvette equipped with experimental shielding technology gleaned from recently captured outposts. Officially, his mission was reconnaissance, tracking Coalition fleet movements and identifying potential targets. In reality, Watson was a hunter. Watson and his specialized crew became ghosts in the depths of space. They would intercept coded messages intended only for high command, deciphering whispers about secret research convoys and hidden fallback stations. Then they'd strike, leaving flaming wrecks and panic calls for reinforcements echoing in their wake. The Harbinger became a legend whispered across both human and Coalition comm channels. It was a symbol of retribution, a reminder that the hunters had become the hunted. Admiral Riker, now burdened by the weight of countless failures, found himself trapped in a desperate race against time. He knew humanity understood the gravity of the situation. If they could fully harness the adaptive potential their own weapon had unlocked, the Coalition wouldn't just be defeated. They faced the possibility of extinction. Riker initiated a desperate gamble, reaching out to humanity's leadership with an offer for a ceasefire. The response was swift and chillingly straightforward. Dismantle your entire biowarfare division unconditionally, or face the consequences. Riker knew there was no choice. Dissent within the Coalition was at an all-time high. The threat of human retaliation loomed large, and with each passing day, the possibility of them mastering their newfound biological advantage grew exponentially. He convened the council one final time, the atmosphere not one of diplomacy, but of forced surrender. Publicly, the official narrative spun a tale of seeking peace, of recognizing past mistakes and taking a bold step towards a brighter future. In reality, everyone in the room knew the truth. They were doing this because their backs were against the wall, and there was nowhere left to run. News of the ceasefire reached Dr. Brown as her team achieved a major breakthrough. They had isolated the exact genetic sequence responsible for the rapid adaptation triggered by the Coalition's virus. It wasn't a cure, but a blueprint, the potential to manipulate and enhance their own biology in a controlled way. The possibilities were as breathtaking as they were terrifying. Captain Watson received reports of the ceasefire while mapping routes through a particularly volatile nebula. He swore, his anger flaring hotter than the plasma clouds they sought to navigate. His crew, handpicked from those who had lost the most in the initial bioweapon attack, shared his sentiment. "Orders, Captain?" his first officer, Lieutenant Ellis, asked. Her voice betrayed the same barely contained rage. Watson stared at the star charts. The Coalition's suddenly vulnerable outposts marked like open wounds. They want peace. They think a piece of paper changes anything? He crumpled the transmission in his fist. Not a chance in hell. Harbinger will continue as planned. News of Watson's defiance reached high command and ignited a firestorm of debate. Admirals argued over the risks of alienating those Coalition members genuinely seeking reconciliation. Dr. Brown, her voice now carrying the weight of both scientific achievement and moral authority, urged caution. "We've achieved a significant victory," she pleaded. "The threat to our immediate survival is diminished. Let us focus on understanding this evolutionary leap, on using it to protect ourselves, not to become the very thing we swore to fight against." Yet across human territories, Watson found support. families who refused to believe in the good intentions of their attackers, veterans haunted by fallen comrades, countless voices demanding not just peace, but retribution. The debate raged, mirroring the struggle within the human spirit itself to forgive or to relentlessly seize the advantage they now held. Admiral Riker watched as the first bioweapon research facilities were dismantled. Coalition engineers worked alongside reluctant human observers, ensuring that decades of terrifying experimentation were reduced to rubble and sanitized code. With each destroyed lab, he felt a flicker of hope rekindle. Perhaps they had averted the worst-case scenario. Perhaps this fragile peace could take root and grow into something genuine. Yet news from the Harbinger was a persistent, festering thorn in his side. The rogue warship now hunted independently, ignoring all orders to stand down and harassing Coalition supply lines with guerrilla tactics. It was a constant reminder of the tenuous nature of this newfound peace and how easily it could shatter. A breakthrough came unexpectedly, not from the battlefield, but from a quiet lab on a backwater human moon. Working under Dr. Brown's indirect supervision, a young scientist named Dr. Kiara Lee made a startling discovery. Within the human genetic code, alongside the sequence responsible for the rapid adaptation, lay another, dormant yet incredibly complex. It appeared to act as a regulator, a failsafe system to prevent biological evolution from spiraling out of control. Brown's voice crackled over a secure channel.
It's brilliant, Admiral. Think of it as the brakes to their newly unleashed accelerator. The attack inadvertently woke up this dormant failsafe system. It's what's keeping their adaptation stable, preventing the kind of uncontrolled cellular mutation we see in unrestrained cancers.
Now, instead of blind retribution, humanity held the key to understanding and safely controlling the extraordinary evolutionary potential within themselves. The Coalition, desperately hopeful, offered full access to their own genetic data in exchange for a share in this scientific breakthrough. Captain Watson watched from the bridge of the Harbinger as a Coalition transport ship laden with scientific data docked with a human research station. His fists clenched, the betrayal burning within him. To him, this wasn't progress, it was cowardice, trading away their hard-won advantage for empty promises and false hopes. Word of Dr. Lee's discovery reached him amid a daring raid on a hidden Coalition outpost. He ordered his crew to evacuate the captured scientists, and then set the facility's self-destruct sequence. As the Harbinger vanished into the swirling dust of an asteroid belt, his mind throbbed with a dangerous plan. Human fleets began massing along the newly demilitarized borders with the Coalition territory. Despite the ceasefire, a tense undercurrent thrummed through star lanes. Admiral Riker, caught between a cautious hope for the future and a dread of the lingering threat Watson represented, ordered his forces not to engage, but to remain vigilant. The scientific exchange program commenced, but suspicion lingered. Dr. Brown and her team analyzed the alien genetic data. The research now focused on understanding the limits and potential dangers of their own remarkable adaptation. They shared their insights on the failsafe system, hoping to foster the beginnings of scientific collaboration. Yet they also held back key pieces of the puzzle, a necessary precaution against both future betrayal and the inherent volatility of their unforeseen gift. Captain Watson struck at the heart of the fragile peace. Through a network of sympathizers and old black market contacts, he acquired a relic of the pre-Coalition era, a stealth drive of exceptional power that could render the Harbinger completely invisible to conventional sensors. Armed with this, he meticulously planned his most daring act of defiance yet. His target, the primary human research station where the shared Coalition genetic data was being analyzed. It was a gamble. If he succeeded, he could sever the roots of this newfound collaboration and send a message loud and clear. The Coalition could never be trusted, and humanity's only path was through their complete dominance. Dr. Brown worked late into the night, the weight of responsibility heavier than any physical burden. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming, each alien genetic sequence revealing both terrifying potentials and the delicate intricacies of life across the galaxy. This knowledge could usher in a golden age, or be twisted into a doomsday weapon by the wrong hands. A shadow fell across her console as the station's lights flickered. "Emergency power protocols," a calm AI voice announced. Watson had triggered an energy surge to mask his approach. Security teams scrambled, but the Harbinger, cloaked by its stolen tech, slipped past the station's defenses like a ghost. The assault was swift and brutal. Watson and his hardened crew stormed the labs, not to kill, but to capture. They seized the core database, the irreplaceable repository of Coalition knowledge, and vanished back into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. News of Watson's rage sent shockwaves through both human and Coalition space. What had been a fragile peace began to unravel. Admirals on both sides issued orders for increased patrols, whispers of preemptive strikes rippling through the ranks. It seemed the cycle of fear and aggression might yet consume them all. Dr. Brown stood amid the wreckage of her lab, not despairing but resolute. Watson was a dangerous rogue element, but he didn't represent the heart of humanity. He was the product of their pain, a stark reminder of what could happen if they let their newfound power consume them. She broadcast a message, carried on every human frequency and painstakingly translated into the major Coalition languages. "This attack is a tragedy, but it won't define us. We will not be driven by vengeance. Captain Watson's actions should serve as a warning that true security lies not in the blind pursuit of dominance, but in choosing the harder path of knowledge and understanding. We must find a way to harness our evolutionary potential without losing our humanity in the process." In the depths of Coalition space, Admiral Riker watched Brown's message with a mix of hope and resignation. His calls for Watson to be hunted down and brought to justice fell on deaf ears. The rogue captain had become a symbol for those who believed collaboration was akin to surrender. The human fleets along the border didn't retreat, but neither did they advance. It was a stalemate born not of military might, but of a fundamental decision still hanging in the balance. Would they take the leap of faith Brown proposed, or succumb to the fear that fueled Watson's crusade? Captain Watson, haunted by losses he could never make right, piloted the Harbinger deeper into uncharted territories. His crew was a motley bunch, former soldiers disillusioned by peace, scientists who saw in Watson's defiance the chance to study human evolution without ethical constraints, and those simply thirsty for revenge. In their isolation, they became a grotesque distortion of the humanity they claimed to represent. The stolen Coalition genetic database fueled their reckless experiments. They spliced their own DNA with that of alien species, seeking enhanced strength, improved reflexes, or even adaptations that bordered on the monstrous. Watson watched his crew transform into reflections of their own inner turmoil, and he recognized the darkness spreading within himself. His quest for retribution had consumed him, turning him into the very thing he swore to fight. On a desolate, ice-covered moon, they established a hidden base, a twisted sanctuary for those who saw the Coalition as nothing but an existential threat. News of the monstrous outpost inevitably reached both the Coalition leadership and the human high command. This was a threat both factions had created, and one they both now regretted. Admiral Riker, his own position precarious amidst hardline factions calling for a full-scale assault, proposed a desperate gamble. With hesitant approval from his human counterparts, he dispatched a small mixed strike fleet. This was not a mission of destruction, but of capture. His goal? To secure the base intact, a testament to the horrors that unchecked fear and vengeance could create. The assault was swift and brutal. Coalition and human troops fighting side by side in an uneasy alliance stormed the hidden outpost. Watson's monstrously modified crew fought with terrifying strength, but they were outnumbered and ultimately subdued. Watson himself, cornered in his lab, surrounded by the nightmarish results of his experiments, found himself facing Dr. Brown. Her eyes held not hatred, but a profound sadness. "Is this what you wanted?" Brown asked, her voice shaking. "To turn yourself into the very thing you despise? This path only leads to destruction." Watson, broken and surrounded by the horrifying consequences of his actions, felt the last vestiges of his defiant spirit crumble. He was brought back in chains, not as a war trophy, but as a patient in desperate need of redemption. The Coalition and the humans recognized that he and his crew were not irredeemable monsters, but victims of the same fear and trauma that sparked the ill-fated bioweapon attack in the first place. Brown's team, with reluctant Coalition assistance, painstakingly reversed the dangerous modifications. The process was agonizing, both physically and psychologically, as they were forced to confront the horrors inflicted upon themselves and others. In the aftermath, it was decided that the hidden base would be destroyed. Its existence was a stain they could not afford to let spread, a warning echoing through the corridors of power on all sides. Humanity and the Coalition stood at a precipice. Watson's rebellion was quelled, but the specter of conflict remained omnipresent. However, the shared ordeal brought forth a reluctant collaboration. Joint scientific teams, monitored with an abundance of caution, continued the work started by Dr. Lee and her team. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like there was a path to walk together. After all, hadn't the initial attack brought out the best in humanity, even if triggering the worst? It was not in a grand victory, but in the hard-won recognition that true strength lies not in relentless domination, but in the courageous choice to understand, to evolve, and to forge a future on the shared ground of hope, not fear. This, they all came to understand, was the truest test of both humanity and the Coalition as a whole.